I stood in front of the bathroom mirror in my new country house, dabbing away the tears of joy that had run down my wrinkled face. At 69 years old, after 45 years of marriage and 2 years of grieving my husband's death, I had finally done something entirely for myself. This little place with its garden full of potential and windows facing the fields belonged to me. Only me. I had spent my whole life savings. $5,000 I stored, penny by penny, refusing myself small treats for decades. But it was worth every cent. For the first time ever, I owned something no one could take from me. A safe haven where I could plant flowers, read my books, and simply live in peace. I ran my hand over the freshly painted cream-colored wall, breathed in the scent of new wood, and felt something I hadn't known in years. Real freedom. That morning, I ate breakfast in my tiny kitchen while listening to birds outside. I watered the potted plants I bought in town and thought about where I'd put my favorite rocking chair. Everything was perfect. Everything was mine. The phone rang while I was arranging my few belongings in the master bedroom closet. I saw my daughter Rebecca's name on the screen and smiled, thinking maybe she wanted to congratulate me on the house, even though she had criticized the idea from the start. "Mom, it's a waste of money," she had said again and again. "You should stay in your apartment close to us." Close to them, not with me. Close enough so I'd always be there when they needed something. "Hello, my sweet girl." I answered with the kind of motherly warmth that never disappears, no matter how many disappointments pile up. "Mom, get ready. I'll be there in an hour with 20 people from David's family," she said. No greeting. Just commands in that bossy tone she adopted after getting married. "Cook for everyone and prepare the rooms. We're only staying for 2 weeks." The world froze. It truly felt like the floor shifted under me. My heart started pounding so hard, I thought it might burst out of my chest. 20 people, Rebecca. I just got here. I haven't prepared anything. I don't even have food for them. Mom, stop being dramatic. They're your family now. You have to welcome them properly. David says his cousin Emily is coming with her 4 little kids. His brother Noah is bringing his wife and their twins, and Aunts Carol and Beth are coming with their families, too. It's vacation time, and they need a free place to stay. Your house is perfect. But, Rebecca, I don't have space for that many. This is a small 2-bedroom, no excuses. We're your family. You're responsible for helping us. And why did you buy such a big place if it's not for us to use? Don't be selfish, Mom. We're already on the way, so get everything ready. Oh, and make sure there are enough clean towels for everyone. The kids will want to swim in the lake, so also pack food for the drive back. See you. She hung up. Just like that. I stood there holding the shaking phone, feeling all the happiness from minutes earlier disappear like smoke. 20 people in my new house. No warning, no asking if I could handle it, if I wanted to, if I even had the resources. And worst of all, she spoke of my home like it was a free hotel for her husband's relatives. I looked around at my little 2-bedroom, 1-bathroom house. Where were 20 people supposed to sleep? On the floor? In my living room that barely fit a small sofa? My fridge was nearly empty. I only had a few eggs, some milk, and a couple of tomatoes I bought in town. How could I feed 20 people with that? And what money would I use to feed them for 2 weeks? But the biggest pain wasn't the impossible logistics. What truly shattered me was realizing that once again, my wishes meant nothing. My daughter had made the decision for me. She took control of my house, my time, and my money, as if I were her employee, and not her mother. As if this home, bought with my sweat and my life savings, existed only as a free lodging spot for her in-laws. I sat on the edge of my new bed, the one I'd chosen so carefully while imagining peaceful mornings reading there, and felt that familiar empty ache in my stomach. It was the same feeling I had every time Rebecca and her husband showed up at my old apartment. They'd eat whatever was in my fridge, use my washing machine, watch my TV, and leave everything dirty and out of place, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. I remembered clearly the day after my husband's funeral, when I needed emotional support more than ever. Rebecca had arrived with empty boxes and a fake smile. "Mom, you have too many things. You need to get rid of all this," she said while packing up my late husband's books without even asking. "We're taking these. You don't need them. At your age, you barely read." And I, lost in grief and confusion, let her walk out with half my memories, including the gold watch that had belonged to my father-in-law. When I sold the apartment to buy this house, she kept pushing me to give her the money so she could invest it. "Mom, you don't understand finances. I know how to make that money grow," she insisted with that condescending smile I couldn't stand. When I refused, she ignored me completely for a month. And now, on my very first day in my new home, she was already claiming the right to use it, as if it belonged to her. Tears slid down my face as I looked through the window at the garden I had dreamed of caring for. In 1 hour, all this silence, this peace, this sense of freedom would be swallowed by chaos. I stayed sitting on my bed for several minutes, trying to process what had just happened. The quiet of my new home, which moments earlier had felt so lovely and calming, now felt heavy and threatening. In less than an hour, this refuge I had built with such sacrifice would become a place of noise and demands. I stood up slowly, feeling the weight of my 69 years more than ever. My legs trembled as I walked to the kitchen and opened the refrigerator with a mix of desperation and hope. It was even worse than I remembered. 3 eggs, half a gallon of milk, 2 tomatoes, a piece of cheese I bought yesterday, and a bottle of water. That was everything I had to feed 20 people. I opened the cupboards with shaking hands. 1 can of beans, 1 can of tuna, half a bag of rice, salt, pepper, and oil. I didn't even have enough dishes. I'd only bought a set for 4, thinking that was more than enough for me. I never imagined my daughter would turn my home into a camp for her extended family. I looked at the clock. 50 minutes. 50 minutes to pull off a miracle. I grabbed my purse and car keys, knowing I had to drive into town for groceries. But when I checked my wallet, my heart dropped even further. After paying for the house, basic furniture, and moving costs, I only had $300 left until next month. How could I feed 20 people for 2 weeks with that? The drive to town felt endless. Every passing minute was 1 minute less to prepare whatever I somehow could. At the small supermarket in town, I moved through the supermarket aisles like a woman in panic, mentally tracking every dollar as I filled the cart. Rice, beans, pasta, tomato sauce, a few cheap vegetables, bread. Nothing fancy, nothing special. Just the kind of basic food that could stretch to feed a crowd. The total came to $2.40, almost everything I had left. By the time I got back, I only had 20 minutes. 20 minutes to turn my tiny kitchen into something that could feed an army. I set water to boil for rice and pasta. I tore open cans like someone possessed. I chopped vegetables while tears spilled down my face. They weren't from onions. They were from fury, helplessness, and a deep sadness over everything that was happening. As I cooked, my thoughts wouldn't stop replaying how I'd ended up like this. After my husband died, I tried to be the perfect mother, the flexible mother-in-law, the always available grandmother. Whenever Rebecca needed a babysitter, I was there. Whenever she wanted to borrow money, I was there. When she used my car because hers was in the shop, I was there, always available, always agreeing, always saying yes. I remembered the time my son-in-law David showed up at my old apartment with 3 friends without warning, expecting me to cook and provide drinks for all of them for the whole weekend during a football game. My mom's out of town and you cook so well, he'd said with that fake smile that irritated me so much, and I, as always, had rushed to the store, spent my own money, and cooked for them like some hired cook. Or the time Rebecca asked me to watch her sister-in-law's children because of a so-called family emergency. 3 small kids for an entire week without paying me a cent, without even asking if I was able. When I mentioned I'd had to cancel my doctor's appointments to do it, she said, "Oh, Mom, don't exaggerate. Besides, it's good for you to have something to do so you don't feel so lonely." Lonely. That word echoed in my mind as I stirred the tomato sauce. I felt lonelier surrounded by my own family than when I was actually alone. Solitude, at least, is honest. It doesn't pretend to love you while it uses you. The sound of cars pulling in snapped me out of my thoughts. I looked through the window and saw 3 vehicles unloading people like they were checking into an all-inclusive resort. Children shouting, adults laughing, luggage being dragged out of trunks. And there was Rebecca, directing it all like the official host of my house. "Mom!" she yelled from outside. "Come help us with the bags." I stood in my kitchen holding the wooden spoon I'd been using to stir the sauce, and something inside me finally broke. Not dramatically like in movies, but quietly and decisively, like the last thread snapping after carrying too much weight for too long. I walked out of the kitchen and opened the front door. The sight took my breath away. 20 people, just like she said, from babies to older adults, piling out of the cars as if arriving at their favorite vacation spot. Some were already in swimsuits. Others carried coolers full of beer. And every single one of them looked at me with the entitled smile of someone who knows they'll be treated like royalty. "Aunt Mary!" shouted Emily, David's cousin, holding a crying baby. "What a gorgeous house! The kids are going to love it here. I hope you made plenty of food. We're starving from the drive." Noah, David's brother, came up smiling and slapped me on the back like we were old friends. "Mother-in-law, this is perfect for the holidays. Is lunch ready? The kids haven't eaten." Of course they hadn't eaten. Why would they? Grandma Mary would take care of everything, like always. The dependable worker who never says no. "Mom," Rebecca said, walking over with a smile that never reached her eyes. "I hope you set up the rooms. Emily and her family will need the master bedroom because the baby cries at night, and we can sleep in the other one. Everyone else can stay in the living room, the master bedroom, my bedroom, the same room I had just moved into hours ago, the one where I imagined waking up each morning looking at the garden through the window. Without asking me, without even pausing to think, they had already decided I would sleep on the sofa in my own house. I stared at this crowd invading my home, touching my belongings, speaking about my space as if it belonged to them. And for the first time in many years, I felt something other than surrender. I felt a small fierce spark of something I had forgotten. Indignation, but I still didn't know what to do with it. "Mom, the food!" Rebecca shouted from the doorway, as if I were a waitress who'd taken too long with an order. "The kids are hungry, and the adults want to eat before we settle in." I walked back to the kitchen like a ghost, feeling 20 pairs of eyes on my back. On the stove, the rice was stuck slightly to the bottom of the pot. The pasta was nearly overcooked, and the tomato sauce looked thinner than I wanted. But it was all I had. It was everything I could manage with the little time and money I had. I started serving on the plates I owned, already knowing they wouldn't be enough. After 8 servings, I ran out of dishes. I had to improvise with cups, bowls, even the lid of a pot as a plate for one of the smaller kids. The humiliation felt total. "Is this it?" Noah asked, eyeing the small portion of rice and sauce on his plate. "I thought there'd be meat or chicken. Don't you have anything else?" "It's just that you arrived so suddenly and I didn't have time to," I began. But David cut me off. "Mary, it's fine. We get that you weren't expecting so many people, but you could have tried harder. We're family, right? And this house is amazing. You must still have money saved to get better food." Money saved. If only they knew I had just spent nearly everything I had left on that meal they were judging. Or maybe they wouldn't care. People in David's family had a talent for making you feel guilty no matter what. "Grandma," one of Noah's twins said, a boy around 8, "do you have video games like at my other grandparents' house?" "No, sweetheart. There are no video games here," I answered gently, trying not to unload my frustration on an innocent child. "And cable TV? Wi-Fi?" he continued. "Not yet, honey. I just moved in and haven't set those up." He stared at me like I'd told him I lived in the Stone Age. "So what are we gonna do for 2 weeks?" "This is boring." Emily, while changing her baby's diaper on my dining table, joined in. "Mary, we need you to go to town to buy diapers, formula, and baby food. I forgot to pack enough for 2 weeks. We also need sunscreen, bug spray, and a few other things." She handed me a napkin with a handwritten list. "Here, everything's written down. You can go this afternoon." I took the list with shaking hands. Diapers, formula, sunscreen, bug repellent, pads, painkillers, aspirin, antacid, kids' shampoo, antibacterial soap, laundry detergent. The list went on and on. I calculated at least another $200. My last $200. "Emily," I said, trying not to snap, "I don't have much money left. I just bought the house and—" "Oh, Mary," she cut in with a laugh. "Don't exaggerate. These are basic things. It's not gonna ruin you." Besides, it's for your family. I'm sure you have a little savings for emergencies." Emergencies? They were the emergency, but not the kind I had in mind. Then Paul, one of David's uncles, came over holding a beer he'd taken from his own cooler. Thank God, because I didn't even have drinks to offer. "Mary, where can we put our stuff? We need space in the fridge for our beers and food." I opened my small fridge, already packed with the few groceries I bought that morning. "Well, you can move my things and—" "Perfect," he said, already shoving my food aside to make room for his. "And where are Robert and I sleeping? You only have 2 bedrooms, and Rebecca said that—" "Oh, don't worry," he answered himself. "We'll sleep in the living room. Just make sure you've got enough blankets and pillows. It gets chilly here at night. Blankets and pillows for 20 people. I had exactly 3 blankets and 4 pillows in the whole house. My house, turning into a free hostel." Meanwhile, the children had found my garden and were running through it, right over the potted plants I'd so lovingly bought that morning. I watched one of them crush the little tomato plants I had planted just hours earlier, full of excitement. "Kids, be careful," I yelled from the window. "Oh, let them be," Noah shouted back. "They're children. They need space to run and play. That's why we came to the countryside, to let them be free. Free in my garden, destroying my plants, eating my food, with my money funding their vacation while I played hotel staff." Rebecca came up to me while I was washing dishes at the tiny sink. "Mom, I need to talk to you. David's family is really happy to be here, but I think you could try a little harder to make them feel welcome." I turned to her, soapy water dripping from my hands. "Try harder?" "Yes, Mom. The food was very basic, and the house feels kind of cold. Like you don't want us here. Remember, this is a chance for you to bond with David's family. You should be grateful they want to spend time with you. Grateful. That word hit me like a blow. Grateful that 20 people stormed into my house uninvited, spent my money, criticized my food, wrecked my garden, and treated me like a maid, and—" Rebecca added, "I hope you're not thinking of charging them to stay here. That would be so stingy. Charge them." The thought had never crossed my mind, but the moment she said it, something clicked. Anywhere else, they'd be paying at least $100 a night per room. 20 people. 2 weeks. That was thousands of dollars. But I stayed silent. Not yet. I just nodded and kept washing dishes, feeling that tiny spark of indignation begin to grow inside me. That night, while 20 people slept peacefully in my house, I lay awake on the little sofa in the living room, listening to snores from every direction, staring at the ceiling, and asking myself when exactly I'd lost control of my life. The answer came in the dark. I'd lost it bit by bit. Every time I said yes when I wanted to say no. Every time I put someone else's needs before mine. Every time I let them act like my time, my money, and my space were worthless. But for the first time in a long time, I also realized something else. It wasn't too late to take that control back. I woke at 5 in the morning with terrible back pain from the sofa. The quiet of dawn lasted exactly half a minute before chaos exploded. Emily's baby started crying, waking the other kids, who instantly started racing through the house, screaming like it was a theme park. I got up feeling every one of my 69 years in my bones and went to the kitchen to make coffee. I needed caffeine to survive the day. But when I got there, Noah was already digging through my fridge like it was his. "Morning, Mary," he said without even glancing at me. "Where's the coffee? And we need milk for the kids' cereal." "I don't have cereal," I answered, trying to keep my voice neutral. "What do you mean you don't have cereal? What are the kids supposed to eat for breakfast?" It was a fair question, and I had no good answer. I didn't have cereal. I didn't have enough milk. I didn't have enough of anything to feed 20 people for 2 weeks. My tiny pantry was stocked for one person who lived simply and cheaply. "I could make scrambled eggs," I offered, knowing I had exactly 6 eggs left after what I'd used yesterday. 6 eggs for 20 people. Noah laughed. "We need to go into town for real food. And hurry, kids get hungry fast. Let's go," he said, as though it were a joint decision, as though the money belonged to both of us, as though I hadn't blown my last savings on the dinner they insulted. Emily walked in holding the baby and wearing a scowl. "Mary, I need you to boil some water for the bottle. And I also need you to wash these clothes, because the baby messed himself last night." She handed me a bag heavy with filthy clothes that smelled awful. "Didn't you bring enough clothes for the baby?" I asked. "Yes, but I didn't think he'd get that dirty. And you have a washing machine. Isn't it easier to wash here than carry all the laundry? Easier for her. More labor for me. More water. More electricity. More detergent. Paid by me." The children started filing into the kitchen like a hungry pack of wolves. 5 kids between 4 and 12, all asking what was for breakfast, expecting magic from Grandma, as usual. "Grandma, I'm hungry," the youngest girl said, her innocent face breaking my heart. It wasn't her fault to be in this mess. "I know, sweetheart. Let's see what we can do," I said, opening empty cupboards and trying to work some kind of miracle. Robert appeared, yawning and rubbing his stomach. "Mary, do you have proper coffee? Not that instant stuff? Something decent, you know." I had just gotten up from my sofa after being kicked out of my own bed, and he was asking for gourmet coffee. "I only have instant," I told him. "Seriously. Well, I guess we'll need to go to town for real coffee, too. And while we're there, we can pick up everything else we'll need for the next few days." We. That word again, as if we were partners in this chaos. Rebecca came downstairs from my bedroom, looking perfectly rested after sleeping in my bed. "Good morning, Mom. Is breakfast ready? David's hungry, and he doesn't like to wait." "Rebecca, I don't have enough food." "We talked about this yesterday," she interrupted. "You need to get organized. There are 20 of us. You can't just improvise. Why don't you make a proper shopping list and go to town? We'll stay here and look after the house." Taking care of my house while I spent my money buying food for them. David appeared behind Rebecca, flashing that fake smile I knew so well. "Mother-in-law, good morning. I heard you're going to town. Could you bring cigarettes and beer? The ones we brought won't last 2 weeks. Oh, and charcoal for a barbecue tomorrow. Cigarettes, beer, charcoal." The list kept growing, and my wallet kept shrinking. "David, I don't smoke or drink. I don't even know brands." "Don't worry. Any brand works," he said. "The important thing is that we have enough to enjoy ourselves." Enjoy themselves. Using my money, in my house, while I became their personal servant. Paul joined in from the kitchen. "Mary, last night I talked to Robert, and we thought it would be nice to have a big barbecue for the whole family. Maybe invite more relatives who live nearby. Could you organize it for the weekend? More relatives? I felt my blood pressure rising. Yes, we're a close family. It'll be fun. You'll just need to buy meat for around 30 people. Nothing extravagant. 30 people. Meat for 30 people. At least $500 more, which I absolutely didn't have. I don't think I can afford that, I started. Oh, Mary, Emily interrupted. Don't be stingy. It's a family gathering, and with what you're saving by not paying for a hotel, you can easily manage a barbecue. Not paying for a hotel, as if being in my house was free, as if my time, my space, my peace didn't matter. Meanwhile, the kids had discovered my small stash of crackers and were eating them straight from the packages, leaving crumbs everywhere in my freshly cleaned kitchen. Children, don't eat that, I shouted. What are those crackers for, Mom? Rebecca asked, annoyed. They're just crackers. The kids are hungry, and you haven't prepared anything for breakfast. At least let them have something. Something? My crackers? My food? My last reserves? Mom, Rebecca continued, I think you're being a little selfish. This is a wonderful chance for family bonding, and you're just fussing over small things like crackers and money. Aren't you happy to see us happy? Happy? They were happy spending my money, sleeping in my home, eating my food, and treating me like staff. Of course they were happy. I stood in my kitchen surrounded by 20 people looking at me like I was the villain for not magically feeding them for free for 2 weeks. And then something inside me clicked. Not a dramatic explosion, but a quiet alignment, like a puzzle piece that had been missing for years finally fitting into place. Suddenly, everything became clear. These people didn't love me. They needed me. There was a difference, and I had spent years confusing the two. It's fine, I said calmly, surprising even myself. I'll go to town and get what you need. Everyone smiled, convinced they'd won yet another victory over the obliging grandma. But as I grabbed my purse and car keys, I wasn't thinking about coffee or shopping lists. I was thinking about something else entirely. The lawyer's office I had noticed in town yesterday, and a conversation that maybe it was time to have. For the first time in days, I left my house with a real smile. The drive into town felt liberating. Alone with my thoughts, no children screaming, no adults treating me like a servant. The silence in the car was a balm to my weary soul. But I didn't go straight to the supermarket as they expected. I parked in front of a small cafe I'd seen the day before, and sat down for a proper cup of coffee, gathering my thoughts. I needed time to process what I had realized that morning. Are you all right, ma'am? Asked the waitress, a kind-faced, middle-aged woman. You seem troubled. I gave a sad smile. Let's say I'm dealing with a complicated family situation. Ah. She nodded knowingly. Family? They're often the ones who hurt us the most, aren't they? Her words hit me like lightning. Yes, my own family was hurting me, and I had grown so accustomed to it that I thought it was normal. After finishing my coffee, I walked through the small town until I found what I was looking for. Jeremy Stone, attorney at law. The sign was simple but professional. I took a deep breath and went inside. Good morning, said a man around 50, friendly-faced. How can I help you? I need legal advice on family matters, I said, feeling a little ridiculous but determined. Jeremy invited me to sit and offered water. For the next hour, I recounted everything. Rebecca's call, the invasion of my home, the financial burden, and the complete disregard for my property and my money. He listened silently, occasionally jotting notes. "Mrs. Albright," he finally said, "what you're describing is financial and emotional abuse. Being family doesn't give them the right to use your property without permission or force you to spend your money on them." "But they are my family," I murmured, repeating the excuse I had clung to for years. "True family respects. It doesn't exploit," he said firmly. "Have you ever thought about setting legal boundaries?" "Legal boundaries?" The idea sounded as strange as it did freeing. "What kind of boundaries?" I asked. "Well, for instance, your house is your private property. You have the absolute right to decide who can enter and under what conditions. If someone refuses to leave when you ask, they're technically trespassing." "Trespassing? My own family?" I whispered. Jeremy continued. "Also, if so many people are using your home as lodging, legally, you could charge them for the services you provide. Food, shelter, utilities. In any hotel, they'd pay hundreds of dollars for what you're giving them for free. Could I really charge them?" I asked, a mix of hope and fear swirling inside me. "Of course. It's your house, your resources. If they come uninvited and don't contribute financially, you have every right to establish commercial terms for their stay." I left Jeremy's office carrying a folder full of documents and a new perspective. I had drafted a formal letter outlining commercial lodging terms for my home, including rates per room, per meal, and per service. I also had guidance on my legal rights as a homeowner and steps I could take if anyone refused to comply. Next stop, the bank. I needed to see exactly how much money I had left and how much I had spent over the past 2 days. The numbers were alarming. In under 48 hours, I had spent $520 of my modest savings. At that pace, I would be completely broke in a week. The bank manager, a young man named Richard, reviewed my account with concern. "Mrs. Albright, these expenses are very high compared to your usual activity. Is everything okay?" I briefly explained the situation. He nodded knowingly. "It's none of my business, but I've seen cases like this. Elderly people being financially exploited by relatives. Have you considered setting limits on your spending?" "I'm starting to," I admitted. "If you'd like, we can help you control expenses or create a budget that prevents overspending. We can also set your account to require authorization for purchases above a certain amount." Another tool I hadn't known existed. Another way to protect myself from my own misguided generosity. Finally, I went to the supermarket, but this time I bought only the essentials. Rice, beans, pasta, tomato sauce, some inexpensive vegetables. No luxuries, no barbecue meat, no beer, no cigarettes. I spent exactly $50. 3 hours later, I returned home to a chorus of complaints. "Mom, you took forever," Rebecca shouted. "The kids are starving, and so are we." "Where's the meat for the barbecue?" Paul demanded. "And the beer?" David added. "The cigarettes?" Robert insisted. I looked at them all, standing in my living room, expecting me to solve every problem with my money. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel guilty. I felt clarity. I brought basic food, I said calmly. Rice, beans, pasta, enough so no one starves. But what about everything we asked for? Emily pressed. I didn't buy it, I replied simply. The silence that followed was deafening. 20 people stared at me as if I had lost my mind. What do you mean you didn't buy it? Noah demanded. I don't have money for meat for 30 people, beer, cigarettes, or the rest of your requests. I only have money for basic food. But Mom, Rebecca interjected, her condescending tone sharp as ever. We know you have savings. Don't be stingy. I pulled out the papers I'd gotten from the bank and laid them out. These are my bank statements. In 2 days, I've spent $520 of my savings. I have less than $300 left until next month. There's no hidden stash, no secret reserves. This is all I have. The papers passed from hand to hand like evidence in a trial. Faces of disbelief gradually shifted to annoyance. Well, we'll have to find alternatives, David said finally. We can all contribute to the expenses. Excellent idea, I replied, retrieving the other folder from my bag. In fact, I saw a lawyer this morning and prepared a document establishing commercial rates for lodging on my property. The silence returned, but this time it was different, heavier, more aware. The silence of people realizing their victim was no longer a victim. It's $100 per room per night, $50 per person per day for meals, and $20 per day for basic services like water, electricity, and laundry. I read. So far, in 2 days, the total would be $2,800. I could have heard a pin drop. You're charging us to stay in your house? Rebecca shrieked. No, I said as calmly as I could. I'm offering you the option of paying for the services you're receiving or finding alternative lodging. For the first time in years, I controlled the conversation. The explosion that followed was epic. 20 people shouting, protesting, trying every manipulation tactic they'd perfected over the years. But something had changed in me. It was as if I had built an invisible wall that kept their hurtful words from reaching me. This is ridiculous, David shouted. We're family. You can't charge us to stay in your house. Since when are you so greedy, Mom? Rebecca added, crocodile tears in her eyes. Dad would be rolling in his grave if he knew you were charging his own family, Emily said. Her words meant to sting. Mentioning my late husband should have hurt me. But instead, it strengthened me. Your father, I said firmly, worked his whole life so I would have financial security. He would never have allowed his family to treat me like a housekeeper in my own home. We're not treating you like an employee, Emily protested. We're giving you the opportunity to spend time with your family. Spend time? I repeated bitterly. Emily, since you arrived, you've made me wash your baby's clothes, boil water for his bottles, and buy diapers and formula with my money. Is that spending time? But we're family, she insisted. I looked at her with clarity I hadn't felt in years. What family does is respect each other, contribute equally, and not abuse one another's generosity. What you're doing is exploitation. Noah stepped forward, a menacing look on his face. Mary, I think you're losing it. Maybe you need medical help. This isn't you. You're right, I said calmly. This wasn't me before, The old Mary let herself be walked all over, spent her savings on people who treated her badly, and confused being used with being loved. That Mary no longer exists. "Mom, this is embarrassing," Rebecca shouted. "What will people think if they find out you charged your own family for lodging? The same people who would think badly of me for showing up uninvited at a 69-year-old woman's house and expecting her to support them for free for 2 weeks." I replied coolly. Paul tried another approach. "Mary, let's be reasonable. We understand you have expenses, but these rates are exaggerated. We can give you something symbolic, $50 for the entire stay." "50?" I repeated slowly. "For 20 people for 2 weeks, that's less than 18 cents per person per day. Do you know how much you spent just on gas to get here?" "Probably more per car." "Different," Robert protested. "Different," I echoed. "Why?" "Because your money is important, but mine isn't. Because your convenience matters, but my expenses don't." Murmurs and long faces filled the living room as they glanced at each other, silently weighing strategies. Then salvation arrived in the form of a woman about 60, carrying a basket of vegetables. Martha, my neighbor, had come to welcome me. "Good morning," she said from the doorway. "I'm Martha. I live next door. I came to meet my new neighbor." "Oh, excuse me, I see you have visitors." "Come in, please," I said, relieved for the interruption. Martha stepped inside, instantly sensing the tension. She was one of those older women who had seen enough of life to read a room in seconds. "What a big family," she commented, smiling, her sharp eyes scanning the scene. "It must be expensive to maintain so many people. I hope they're contributing to the expenses." "They're not contributing?" Martha asked, genuinely surprised. "Oh, what a shame," she continued. "In my day, when you visited someone, you always brought something or helped cover expenses, especially if there were so many guests." "But we're family," Rebecca murmured. "All the more reason," Martha said energetically. "Family is supposed to take care of each other. My daughter lives in the city, and every time she visits with her grandchildren, she brings the groceries. She says it's not fair for me to spend my pension feeding her whole family." I could see Martha's words hitting home. It was one thing for me to tell them they were abusing me, but another for a stranger to validate it. "And where are you all from?" Martha asked innocently. "From the city," David replied curtly. "The trip must have been expensive. Gas, food along the way, and then arriving to find everything paid for. How fortunate. I imagine you all plan to help Mary with expenses for such a large group." Every word Martha spoke felt like a needle pricking my family's conscience, exposing their sense of entitlement. "Martha," I said, "would you like some coffee? I'd love to get to know you better." "Of course," she replied, smiling. "But don't worry about me. I see you already have your hands full with all these people." As I prepared the coffee, Martha followed me into the kitchen. "Honey," she whispered, "I don't know if it's my place to say this, but those people don't look like they're here out of affection. They look like they're here for convenience." Her words hit me like a bomb. Someone else saw what I had been seeing. Someone not clouded by family loyalty or obligation. "Is it that obvious?" I asked. "Darling, I've been around this world for 60 years. I've seen everything. Those people arrived expecting to be treated like kings, And you look exhausted and overextended spending money you don't have. I broke down slightly, but they're my family. True family doesn't abuse, she said firmly. True family cares for their elders. They don't exploit them. Martha put a comforting hand on my shoulder. Want me to tell you something? My sister had the same problem with her children. They lived off her, treated her like an employee, spent her pension, and she had to learn to set boundaries. Do you know what she did? Martha asked. What? I asked, hoping. She set boundaries. She told them, "You visit me only when I invite you, for the time I decide, and you contribute to the expenses. If you don't like it, find a hotel." At first there was drama, shouting, emotional blackmail. But they realized she was serious, and it worked. Now, they visit occasionally, always bring something, always help, and treat her with respect, because they learned a mother's affection isn't free when it's confused with exploitation. When we returned to the living room with coffee, I could see my family murmuring among themselves, clearly reaching some sort of consensus. David cleared his throat. "Mary, we've been talking. We think maybe we could contribute something to the expenses, not the exaggerated amounts you propose, but something reasonable." "How much do you consider reasonable?" I asked. $200 for the entire stay for all of us, Rebecca said. Martha almost choked on her coffee. 20 people, 2 weeks, and they offered $200. The cheapest hotel in town would charge $60 per night per room. The math was unforgiving, but I had already made my decision. $200? I repeated slowly, savoring the moment as they all leaned forward, expecting to have outmaneuvered me. 20 people, 14 days, 3 meals a day, lodging, water, electricity, gas, laundry, and cleaning. "Exactly," Rebecca said, triumphant. "See, we're reasonable. We want to contribute." Martha looked at me with that wise, knowing expression only older women have when something good is about to unfold. She understood completely. "Okay," I said finally. "I accept your proposal." Everyone sighed in relief, thinking they had won, until I added, my voice calm and deliberate. "But there's one condition. Since this is now a commercial transaction, I want you to sign a lodging contract." "A contract?" Noah asked suspiciously. "Of course. If you're paying for services, we need to clearly establish what those services include and what they don't. It protects everyone." I placed the papers Jeremy had prepared on the coffee table. "This contract specifies that for $200, you are entitled to sleep on the living room floor, 1 basic meal a day, rice and beans, and access to the bathroom during specified hours. Nothing else." "1 meal a day?" Emily shrieked. "We expected 3 meals." "Of course," I replied sweetly. 3 meals a day are available in the premium package, the $2,800 option I mentioned earlier. "This is absurd," David exploded. "You're crazy if you think we're signing that." "You don't have to sign," I said with perfect calm. "You can find lodging elsewhere. In fact, I think that would be best for everyone." "Mom," Rebecca cried, "you can't kick us out. We're your family." "I'm not kicking you out," I said. "I'm giving you options. You can pay the commercial rates for the services you want. Pay for the basic services you can afford, or find alternatives that better fit your budget. Martha slowly applauded. Bravo! That's exactly what my sister needed to do. Clear options, fair terms, no emotional blackmail. You stay out of this, Rebecca snapped. You're right, Martha said, standing. It's a family matter, but a good family doesn't treat its elders like that. She turned to me. Mary, if you need anything at all, you know where I live. And if they give you trouble, don't hesitate to call me. Neighbors look out for each other. After Martha left, the room went silent. I could see them thinking, trying to find a new strategy. Paul tried guilt. Mary, your husband and I were very close. Do you think he would like seeing you treat his in-laws this way? My husband, I said firmly, taught me to value myself. He taught me that true love is shown through actions, not words. Allowing others to abuse you isn't love. It's cowardice. Robert tried intimidation. Mary, you don't realize the situation you're getting into. There are many of us, and you're alone. It's not smart to make enemies of the family. His words might have scared me before. Now they only confirmed what I already knew. They didn't love me. They needed me. And when they couldn't use my love, they resorted to fear. Are you threatening me in my own home? I asked, calm. It's not a threat, he said quickly. The reality, I replied, is that you came to my house uninvited, expecting free services you cannot afford. When I asked you to contribute equally, you refused. Now that I offer fair options, you resort to threats and intimidation. Emily began to cry, dramatically, to manipulate. I can't believe how cruel you've become, Mary. My baby needs stability, and you're throwing us out into the street. Your baby, I said, steady, needs parents who can provide for his basic needs without exploiting an elderly woman. If you can't afford a vacation, maybe you shouldn't take one. The children who had been playing in the garden ran in. Grandma, why is everyone shouting? The youngest asked. My heart broke a little. But for the first time in years, I knew my actions were right. The children were innocent in all this, but their parents were using them as shields for their own guilt. The adults are having a serious conversation, I said gently. Why don't you go play outside a little longer? But we're hungry, one of the twins said. Is the food ready? I looked at the adults in the living room. Not one of them moved to feed their own children. They expected me to do it, as always. Parents, I said firmly, your children are hungry. In the kitchen, there's rice and beans you can prepare for them. You're not going to cook? Noah asked, incredulous. I cooked yesterday and the day before. Today it's your turn, I replied. But we don't know how to cook, Emily protested. Then maybe it's time to learn, I said. Or take the children to eat in town. There are several restaurants. David stood abruptly. This is the last straw, Rebecca. Pack our things. We're leaving, right now. Where? Rebecca asked, panic in her voice. We'll find somewhere, David snapped. Anything is better than being here with this version of your mother. I stayed seated, watching them scurry back and forth, hastily packing. Part of me felt a twinge of sadness at the chaos, but a larger part felt relief. Mom, Rebecca said when they were ready. This isn't you. I don't know what's happened, but I hope you reflect on what you've done today. You've destroyed your family for money. No, I said, standing to meet her gaze. I found my dignity and learned the difference between family who loves me and people who use me. You'll regret this, she shouted as she left. When you're alone and sick, don't come asking us for help. I prefer to be alone with dignity than accompanied without respect. I replied calmly. One by one they left. This time there were no tears from the children. They had understood that this visit was different. There were no shouts, no dramatic protests, only the quiet resignation of people who had lost their favorite victim. I watched them drive away for the second and last time, and felt something I hadn't felt in years. Complete peace. That evening Martha came to dinner. She had made chicken stew. I had prepared rice with pigeon peas. We ate on my porch, watching the sun dip behind the fields and talking about garden plans. "Do you feel good about your decision?" she asked. "I feel free," I said for the first time in years. "I feel free." 6 months later, my house had truly become my home. My garden flourished. I had a small circle of friends in town, and I had started taking painting classes at the community center. My days were filled with activities I chose, not ones I was forced into. Rebecca called occasionally, usually needing money, babysitting, or a favor. I listened patiently and said, "I'm sorry, my love, but I can't help you with that." At first, she would get angry. Then she would beg. Then she would threaten. Now, she simply hangs up. I've learned that loving someone doesn't mean letting them hurt you. Being generous doesn't mean exhausting yourself for others. True family takes care of you as much as you take care of them. And most importantly, it's never too late to reclaim your life, your dignity, and your right to happiness. This morning, I woke to birds singing, brewed my coffee in my clean, tidy kitchen, and went out to water my plants, growing beautiful and strong. Just like me. If you enjoyed my story, you can support me with a super thanks so I can write more. What about you? What would you do in this person's shoes? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. And don't forget to like and subscribe for more life stories waiting for you. Big hugs and see you next time.